Moikka moi! It's Riikka Kovasin here with the last video of 2023. This time I'm making a little canvas with some wishes for the 2024. Let's get started. I first cover this flat little canvas base with some color. I'm going to collage pieces on top, so I could have just gone with the edges, but instead I painted the whole thing just to be sure that there's no white peeking through when I start to collage. I'm choosing this kind of a jeans color to go with the project because I'm going to add some blue elements also on top. Next, I then start to add some collage to the background. I'm using these little strips and I chose to keep the color palette mainly in 3 colors at this stage. So there's going to be blue, then black and white, and also brown. Those are the main things in the composition at the moment. I'm using the Distress collage medium as my adhesive and cover the whole background with the strips. So first I'm using the whole strips to go over the length or width of the background and then add little pieces here and there to make the background looking like a square again. When I have the whole area covered, I then use these little labels to kind of break the lines of the strips in a way. So I'm adding them over a couple of strips to kind of break the linear composition a little bit to make it a little bit more eclectic. I also added some ink with a wet brush and then left the project dry. Next, I then add some same ink, vintage photo, to the edges of the piece as well to make it a little bit more vintagey looking. I then add some dimensional texture to the background by using a stencil and some modeling paste. I'm using white paste because I could dye it, for example, using the ink pads, but I thought that this project needed a little bit more white to give it more, well, light and bright feeling. I then let the project air dry for a while because with the modeling paste, if you want the look to be really crisp, it's easier to let it air dry than to carefully use a heat tool because this starts boiling quite easily. After some drying time, I then added a piece of black and white baker's twine there and also this little number token. I chose the number 1 to kind of mark the 1st of January 2024. The other option would have been using 23 and then or 24, but unfortunately I used those from this pack to another project, so it was either 1 or 31 for this one. I then start to make the focal composition. For the first element, I'm inking around the edges of this vintage lady and attaching some butterfly wings to her. So I'm using the same ink to go around the edges and then use double-sided tape to add the wings to the character. I then make a little background cluster for her using some blue elements I dig out of the ephemera packs. The one in the little glassine bag is actually, there's a journaling on the back, hidden in a way, that has my hopes and wishes for 2024. I'm using a stapler to attach the layers together. I then use foam tape to mount the lady on top and then start adding little elements around the main kind of cluster. I'm first choosing a gauge meter or a dial to match the project. These are actually not clock faces, but I thought that this shape would echo kind of a clock face, which would go nicely to the time themed piece of the change of the year. I also go through the ephemera I already have on the table, which elements I'm going to use for this project. I'm also adding some blooms there. These are from AB Studio. And I'm inking around the edges of all the elements to keep the composition and the color scheme a little cohesive. I then make the composition a little bit fuller by using these elements, either mounting them with foam tape to have a little bit of dimension or then just craft glue. You can see me do the composition here. I just sped up the video. After I was more or less happy with the paper elements, I then added the year with some stickers to the left side. So there's the blue numbers stating 2024. As a finishing touch, I then add some couple of vintage buttons here and there, and I'm inking those as well. Even though this is plastic, it's a little bit absorbing, sort of, so I'm not too sure what kind of plastic it is, but it will nicely be grab that ink as well. So get that little bit of worn effect to those. I'm using the same brown ink I have been using throughout the project. And then I also add a couple of leaves here and there just to make the composition a little bit fuller and also add a little bit more of that brownish tone, because now the blooms look a bit too bright white, so they need something on top. And after that, the project is done. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Like always, if you did, please consider subscribing. This is the last video of 2023. I'm wishing you a very best change of the year, and hopefully 2024 is going to be the best one yet. Thanks again. See you next year. Bye.